Rain drummed softly against the metal roof of the Green Valley Animal Rescue Center. Inside the shelter, dozens of dogs barked excitedly whenever footsteps echoed through the hallway. Some wagged their tails. Others stood on their hind legs, hoping someone would stop at their kennel. Every dog seemed eager to be noticed, except one. At the very end of the corridor lay an aging German shepherd. His name was Rex. 10 years old, his once powerful body had grown thinner. Gray hairs covered his muzzle, but his amber eyes remained alert. A small card hung on the kennel door. Name, Rex, age 10, former assignment retired police, K9, nothing more. No badge number, no department. No handler, only a few words that hinted at a forgotten past. Emily, one of the shelter volunteers, approached with a bowl of fresh food. "Good morning, buddy." Rex slowly raised his head. He glanced at the bowl, then looked back toward the shelter's front gate. Emily sighed. "You've been waiting every morning. You should know by now. No one's coming." She set the food down and quietly closed the kennel door. For nearly a month, Rex had followed the same routine. Every morning at 6, he stood at the kennel entrance. He stared toward the parking lot for almost an hour. Then he returned to his blanket. He never barked, never scratched the door. He simply waited. No one knew who he expected to see. Outside, a black SUV pulled into the parking lot. A man stepped out carrying a cup of coffee. His name was Sergeant Ryan Carter, 38 years old, a detective with the city's Criminal Investigation Division. Ryan hadn't planned to adopt a dog, he only wanted to look around. Living alone had become harder after his longtime partner retired because of an injury. The apartment felt empty every evening. A coworker had once joked, "Maybe you don't need another partner. Maybe you need one with 4 legs." Ryan had laughed, but somehow the idea stayed with him. Emily greeted him at the entrance. "Welcome." Looking for a new friend, Ryan smiled. "I'm just visiting. Let's see what happens." They walked through the shelter together. Young Labradors bounced excitedly. A beagle barked nonstop. A border collie chased a tennis ball inside its kennel. Ryan smiled politely, but none of the dogs caught his attention until they reached the final kennel. Rex slowly stood. He remained perfectly quiet. His ears lifted. His eyes stayed fixed on Ryan. Emily stopped walking. "That's strange." Ryan looked at her. "What do you mean he never gets up for visitors?" Ryan stepped closer. Instead of reaching through the fence, he crouched until he was level with the old dog. "Hello there." Rex didn't move. He simply watched. Ryan immediately recognized the expression. It wasn't fear. It wasn't curiosity. It was discipline. The calm focus of a dog trained to study every situation before making a decision. Ryan slowly extended one hand. He didn't force contact. He simply waited. Several silent seconds passed. Then Rex walked forward. He gently sniffed Ryan's fingers. After a brief moment, he stepped back again. Emily smiled. "I've never seen him do that." Ryan nodded. "He was checking who I am." Emily handed him the shelter file. "It's not much." Ryan opened it. His smile disappeared. The folder contained almost nothing. No training records, no retirement papers, no handler's name. Only one short report found wandering near East Harbor Industrial District. Former police K9. Ryan frowned. "That's impossible." Emily nodded. "We thought so too. A police dog should have pages of records." Ryan looked at Rex again. Around the old dog's neck was a worn leather collar. Although cracked with age, it had been carefully cleaned. Someone had taken good care of it. Ryan asked quietly, "Who brought him here?" Emily shook her head. "Animal control found him wandering alone. No one ever claimed him." Ryan couldn't stop staring at the German shepherd. Everything about Rex felt wrong. Working dogs didn't simply disappear. Neither did their records. Someone had erased this dog's history. Ryan slowly stood. "I think there's more to this story." As he turned to leave, he felt a gentle touch. Rex had stepped forward again. The old dog softly pressed his nose against Ryan's hand. only for a second. Then he quietly sat back down. Ryan smiled, for the first time in a long while. The silence didn't feel lonely anymore. He had come to the shelter expecting nothing. Instead, he had just met a forgotten partner whose past was waiting to be uncovered. Neither of them knew it yet. But that quiet moment inside a forgotten kennel would become the beginning of a mystery that had remained hidden for years. Ryan couldn't stop thinking about the old German Shepherd. Even after leaving the shelter, Rex's calm eyes stayed in his mind. Something about that dog didn't make sense. Police K9S never simply disappeared. Every working dog had a history. Training records, medical reports, retirement documents. Someone had deliberately removed Rex's. The next morning, Ryan returned to the shelter before work. Emily looked surprised. "I had a feeling you'd come back." Ryan smiled. I couldn't stop thinking about him. She unlocked the kennel. For the first time since arriving at the shelter, Rex walked towards someone without hesitation. He stopped beside Ryan, not asking for attention, simply standing beside him, like he had done countless times with another officer years ago. Ryan gently scratched behind his ears. "Good morning, partner." Emily laughed softly. "I think he likes that name." While Rex rested quietly nearby, Ryan examined the old leather collar more carefully. It was badly worn. The stitching had faded. The brass buckle was scratched. As he turned it over, he noticed something unusual. Hidden beneath the folded leather was a tiny metal plate. It was so old that dirt almost completely covered it. Ryan carefully cleaned it with his thumb. Tiny engraved letters slowly appeared. Emily leaned closer. "What does it say?" Ryan read the words aloud. "If you found him, keep looking." The shelter suddenly became silent. Emily frowned. "That's strange." Ryan stared at the tiny message. It wasn't an identification tag. It wasn't a registration number. It sounded like a message. A message meant for someone who would eventually find Rex. Someone like him. Ryan removed the collar carefully. On the back of the metal plate was another line, much smaller, almost impossible to read. M. Hale. Ryan repeated the name quietly. M. Hale. Emily searched the shelter records. No owner with that name. Ryan slipped the collar back onto Rex. "I don't think M. Hale owned him. I think M. Hale worked with him." Back at the police station, Ryan spent the afternoon searching old department databases. Nothing. No Rex, no M. Hale, no retired canine matching the dog's description. It was as if both of them had never existed. That made even less sense. Every police canine was registered. Every handler had personnel records. Ryan called a friend in the canine division. "Can you help me identify an old police dog?" "What department? I don't know." There was a brief silence. "That's unusual. Send me a picture." Ryan emailed several photographs of Rex and the collar. Less than an hour later, his phone rang. His friend sounded surprised. "I've never seen that collar before, but the stitching looks custom made. Only a few handlers preferred collars like that." Ryan leaned forward. "Any names?" "There was one officer. He trained dogs about 10 years ago." Ryan waited. "Mason Hale." Ryan froze. The initials matched. "M. Hale. What happened to him?" Another silence. "I'm not sure. I just remember he disappeared from the department. Nobody talked about it afterward." Ryan frowned. "Disappeared. Transferred. I honestly don't know. The records vanished." Ryan slowly lowered the phone. Records disappearing once was possible. Twice was not. That evening, Ryan drove back to the shelter. Emily was finishing her shift. "You found something." Ryan nodded. "I found a name. Mason Hale." Emily looked toward Rex. "So, he really had a partner." Ryan sat beside the kennel. Rex quietly walked over and lay down next to him. Ryan spoke softly. "Were you waiting for Mason?" The old German shepherd lifted his head, His ears twitched. Then, he slowly looked toward the shelter entrance. The same place he watched every morning. Ryan understood. Rex hadn't been waiting for just anyone. He had been waiting for one person, the only partner he had ever trusted. Ryan gently placed a hand on Rex's shoulder. I don't know what happened, but I promise you something. I'm going to find out. For the first time, Rex slowly wagged his tail, only once. It was a tiny movement, but Emily noticed it immediately. Her eyes widened. That's the first time I've ever seen him wag his tail. Ryan smiled. Maybe he finally believes someone is listening. Outside, the evening sky turned dark. Neither Ryan nor Emily realized that the small metal tag hidden beneath an old collar was only the first piece of a much larger mystery. A mystery someone had tried very hard to erase, but after years of silence, it had finally begun to surface. The following morning, Ryan arrived at police headquarters earlier than usual. He carried only two things: a cup of black coffee and a photograph of Rex wearing his old leather collar. He placed the picture on his desk and stared at it for a long moment. Mason Hale. The name refused to leave his mind. Every database search ended the same way. Nothing. No personnel records, no retirement papers, no disciplinary files. It was as if Officer Mason Hale had never existed. That alone was suspicious. Ryan had spent nearly 15 years in law enforcement. He knew one thing for certain. Records could be archived, they could be misplaced. But they didn't simply disappear. Someone had removed them. Ryan walked downstairs to the police archives. An elderly records clerk named Walter looked up from his desk. Morning, Sergeant. Ryan placed the photograph on the counter. I'm looking for an officer. Walter adjusted his glasses. What division? K9? Mason Hale. Walter typed the name into the archive system. Several seconds passed. Nothing appeared. Walter frowned. That's odd. Ryan remained silent. Walter tried another search. Still nothing. He leaned back in his chair. I've worked here for 26 years. I've never seen a personnel file vanish completely. Ryan nodded. Neither have I. As Ryan prepared to leave, Walter suddenly spoke. Wait, I do remember something. Ryan turned back. There used to be a K9 officer named Hale. He was one of the best handlers we'd ever had. Ryan stepped closer. What happened to him? Walter hesitated. There were rumors. People said he was investigating something. But after that, no one talked about him again. Ryan thanked the old clerk and walked away. The mystery was growing larger. That afternoon, he drove to the city K9 training center. Rows of young police dogs were running obstacle courses with their handlers. The sight reminded Ryan of Rex. Strong, disciplined, focused. The training director, Captain Linda Morris, welcomed him into her office. What brings CID out here? Ryan placed the photograph on her desk. Do you recognize this dog? Linda picked up the picture. She looked carefully for several moments. Then, her expression changed. I know this dog. Ryan leaned forward. You do. She nodded slowly. This is Rex. He was one of the finest tracking dogs I've ever seen. Ryan's heartbeat quickened. So his name really is Rex. Linda smiled. Of course. He won state K9 competitions. He helped locate missing children. He tracked dangerous fugitives. He saved lives. Ryan asked quietly. And Mason Hale. Linda's smile faded. He was Rex's handler. The two were inseparable. They trusted each other completely. Ryan hesitated. What happened? Linda looked toward the office window. I wish I knew one day. They simply disappeared. Ryan frowned. Both of them... No, only Mason. Linda folded her hands. Rex returned alone. Ryan stared at her. What do you mean he came back to the training center covered in mud? Exhausted. There wasn't another person with him. Ryan felt a chill. What happened after that? The department took Rex away. I never saw him again. Ryan remained silent. Linda opened an old filing cabinet. After searching for several minutes, She removed a faded newspaper clipping. I kept this because none of it made sense. Ryan unfolded the yellowed paper. The headline read, "Decorated K-9 Officer Missing During Special Investigation." The article was short. Officer Mason Hale had disappeared while assisting an ongoing investigation. No details were released. The case remained open. Ryan looked up. Special investigation. Linda nodded. That's all the newspaper ever said. Everything else was classified. Ryan carefully folded the article as he prepared to leave. Linda stopped him. "Ryan, if you're reopening this, be careful." He looked back. "Why?" She lowered her voice. "There were people who wanted everyone to forget Mason Hale." Ryan drove back to the shelter before sunset. Rex was lying in his usual corner. The moment he saw Ryan, he stood. Ryan entered the kennel and sat beside him. "I learned something today. You weren't abandoned. You came home alone." Rex quietly rested his head beside Ryan's knee. Ryan gently held the old leather collar. "Mason trusted you, and somehow, I think he also trusted whoever would find you." Rex slowly looked into Ryan's eyes. For a brief moment, it felt less like Ryan was comforting the old dog, and more like the old dog was asking him not to give up. Ryan made a silent promise. No matter how long it took, he would uncover the truth. Because somewhere behind the missing records, the vanished officer, and the forgotten police dog, someone was still hiding the final chapter of Mason Hale's story. And Ryan intended to find it. Ryan could no longer treat the case as simple curiosity. Someone had erased Mason Hale's records, someone had hidden Rex's service history, and someone had made sure both disappeared from memory. There had to be a reason. The next morning, Ryan requested access to the city's archived case files. Hours later, an authorization code arrived. Most of the documents connected to Mason Hale were still classified. But one file had accidentally escaped deletion. It contained only a single page. At the top was a case number. Below it were 6 words: Evidence Warehouse, 17, East Harbor District. Ryan immediately recognized the location. It was only a few blocks from the industrial district where animal control had found Rex. That couldn't be a coincidence. Late that afternoon, Ryan drove to East Harbor. The neighborhood looked forgotten. Abandoned factories lined the empty streets. Rust-covered old fences. Broken windows reflected the gray sky. Warehouse 17 stood near the end of the road. The building had been closed for years. A heavy chain secured the front gate. A faded city notice declared the property unsafe. Ryan walked around the perimeter. Nothing seemed unusual until he heard footsteps behind him. He turned. Rex was standing only a few feet away. Ryan blinked in surprise. Rex Emily hurried toward him, slightly out of breath. "I'm so sorry." He slipped out of the shelter when I opened the gate. I drove after him. Ryan looked back at the old German Shepherd. Rex wasn't interested in either of them. His nose stayed close to the ground. Slowly, he began following a scent along the outside wall of the warehouse. Ryan exchanged a glance with Emily. "Has he ever done this before?" She shook her head. "Never." Without hesitation, Rex continued moving. He ignored the front entrance. Instead, he led them toward the rear of the property. Tall weeds covered the ground. Old tire tracks had long disappeared. Near the back fence, Rex suddenly stopped. He began scratching at the dirt. Again. And again. Ryan knelt beside him. Most of the ground was covered with dead leaves. After brushing them aside, he noticed something unusual. A small piece of blue fabric was trapped beneath a loose stone. It looked old, weathered. Ryan carefully pulled it free. Attached to the fabric was a broken police shoulder patch. The department emblem was barely visible. Emily whispered, "Could that belong to Mason?" Ryan didn't answer. Instead, he photographed everything before placing the patch into an evidence bag. Rex wasn't finished. He walked another 20 yards before stopping beside an old drainage tunnel. The concrete opening was partially hidden by vines. The dog stood perfectly still. His ears pointed forward. His breathing became slower. Ryan recognized the behavior immediately. Rex had located something. Ryan switched on his flashlight and shined the beam into the tunnel. The narrow passage disappeared into darkness. Water slowly trickled along the bottom. At first, he saw nothing. Then, something reflected the light. Metal. Ryan carefully stepped inside. About 15 feet from the entrance lay a rusted flashlight. Next to it, a cracked leather glove. Ryan picked both up. The glove had initials stamped inside. M.H. Ryan's heartbeat quickened. Emily covered her mouth. Oh my God, this really was his. Ryan nodded slowly. He was here. Before either of them spoke again, Rex let out a low, quiet growl. Not aggressive, a warning. Ryan immediately turned around. A black pickup truck was slowly driving past the abandoned warehouse. The driver looked toward them, then accelerated without stopping. Ryan watched until the truck disappeared around the corner. Emily spoke softly. "Do you think someone was watching us?" Ryan didn't answer immediately. He looked at the evidence bag in his hand, then toward the empty road. "I think someone hoped nobody would ever come back here." The sun was beginning to set. Long shadows stretched across the abandoned buildings. Ryan carefully secured the glove and flashlight. "We're leaving." Emily nodded. Rex followed closely beside them. As they reached the parking lot, Ryan looked back one last time. The warehouse stood silent, but the silence felt different now. It no longer seemed abandoned. It felt protected, as though the truth had been waiting there all these years, waiting for the one partner who still remembered. Ryan opened the passenger door of his SUV. Rex jumped inside without being asked. For the first time, it felt completely natural. Ryan smiled. "I guess we're partners now." Rex quietly rested his head against the seat. The investigation had finally uncovered its first real evidence. But Ryan couldn't shake one troubling thought. If Mason Hale had left clues behind, who had spent years trying to make sure no one would ever find them, the evidence from Warehouse 17 changed everything. Ryan submitted the flashlight, the leather glove, and the torn shoulder patch for forensic testing. He expected the results to take several days. Instead, his phone rang the very next afternoon. It was the crime lab, Sergeant Carter. "We found something." Ryan drove there immediately. The forensic technician placed the old flashlight on the examination table. We cleaned the corrosion. "You should see this." She switched on a large monitor. An enlarged image of the flashlight appeared on the screen. Near the battery compartment was a tiny engraving. It had been hidden beneath years of rust. Ryan leaned closer. The words were barely readable. "Property of Officer Mason Hale Ryan," stared at the screen. "So it really belonged to him." The technician nodded. "We also found partial fingerprints." Ryan looked hopeful. "Can you identify them?" She shook her head. "They're too damaged. But we recovered something else." She placed a small, transparent evidence bag on the table. Inside was a tiny memory card. Ryan frowned. A memory card. It was hidden inside the flashlight. His heartbeat quickened. "Can you read it? We're trying." "It's badly damaged. But there's a chance we can recover the files." Ryan carefully picked up the evidence bag. If Mason had hidden a memory card inside his flashlight, he had wanted someone to find it. Someone he could trust. That evening, Ryan drove back to the shelter. Rex was lying near the kennel door. The moment he saw Ryan, he stood up. Ryan knelt beside him. "We found another clue." Rex quietly listened. "I think Mason left us a trail." Emily smiled. "Maybe he believed Rex would eventually lead the right person to it." Ryan looked at the old German Shepherd. "I think you're right." The next morning, the crime lab called again. "We recovered one video." Ryan hurried across town. The technician connected the memory card to a computer. A grainy recording appeared on the screen. The image shook violently. It had obviously been recorded by a body camera. The date stamp was from 8 years earlier. Officer Mason Hale appeared on the screen for only a moment before adjusting the camera. His voice could be heard clearly. "If anyone finds this, I'm probably out of time." Ryan stopped breathing. The recording continued. "I've gathered enough evidence to expose them, but someone inside the department knows I'm being followed." The video suddenly became unstable. Mason began running through what looked like an abandoned warehouse. Heavy footsteps echoed behind him. Then another voice shouted from the distance, "There he is!" The camera turned sharply. The image blurred. A loud crash echoed through the speakers. Then, static. The recording ended. Silence filled the laboratory. Ryan slowly looked up. The technician whispered, "That's all we recovered." Ryan replayed the final seconds again. Something caught his attention just before the camera fell. A blue metal sign appeared briefly on the wall. Warehouse 17. The same building. Ryan immediately paused the video. There. The technician zoomed in, behind Mason. Another person was standing near the entrance. Only part of the figure could be seen. A dark jacket. A police badge. But the face remained hidden in the shadows. Ryan stared at the frozen image. It wasn't just an accident. Someone had chased Mason. Someone wearing a badge. Back at headquarters, Ryan requested permission to reopen the missing officer investigation. His captain read the report quietly. Finally, he sighed. This case was closed years ago. Ryan remained calm. It shouldn't have been. The captain looked at the recovered video. After several long seconds, he signed the authorization form. "You have 72 hours. If there's more to this, find it." That evening, Ryan returned to the shelter once again. He sat beside Rex outside the kennel. The old German shepherd rested quietly at his side. Ryan gently scratched behind his ears. "We're getting closer." We finally heard Mason's voice. Rex slowly lifted his head. For the first time, a faint spark returned to the old dog's eyes. It was almost as if he understood every word. Ryan smiled. "I think he knew you'd never give up." Rex leaned gently against Ryan's shoulder. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them needed to. Somewhere, the person who had hunted Mason Hale was still out there. And after 8 long years, the truth had finally begun to fight its way back into the light. 3 days passed without another breakthrough. The recovered body camera footage had confirmed one thing. Mason Hale had not disappeared by accident. Someone had been chasing him, someone carrying a police badge. Ryan spent every spare hour reviewing the damaged video, frame by frame, second by second. He refused to believe the recording had revealed everything late on the 3rd night. He noticed something unusual. Just before the camera fell to the ground, Mason briefly turned his head for less than a second. He spoke 2 words. The audio was weak, almost impossible to hear. Ryan enhanced the recording several times. Finally, the words became clear. "Storage room." Ryan replayed the clip again. The same words. "Storage room." Not warehouse, not exit, storage room. Ryan immediately drove back to warehouse 17. This time he wasn't alone. 2 crime scene investigators accompanied him. Rex rode quietly beside Ryan in the SUV. The old German shepherd stared through the windshield the entire drive. When they arrived, the abandoned building looked exactly as before. Broken windows, rusted walls, silence. Ryan unlocked the temporary police seal placed there after the previous search. The team entered cautiously. Flashlights swept across the dusty floor. Most of the building was empty. Old shelves, broken crates, collapsed ceilings. Nothing unusual. After nearly an hour, one investigator walked over. "We've searched every room." Ryan looked around. No, not every room. He remembered Mason's words. Storage room. There had to be another section. Ryan called softly Rex. The German shepherd immediately stood. His nose lowered toward the concrete floor. Slowly, he began following a scent. Past the empty offices, past the loading dock, toward the rear wall of the warehouse. Then he stopped. Rex stared, at an old row of metal storage lockers covered in dust. Ryan examined them carefully. Most doors were hanging open, all except one. Locker number 28. The lock had rusted shut. Ryan pulled on the handle. It didn't move. One investigator handed him a pry bar with a loud crack. The old lock finally broke. The metal door slowly opened. Inside, there was almost nothing, only a faded cardboard box. Ryan carefully lifted it onto the floor. Dust covered every side. Written across the lid in black marker were two words. Personal files. Ryan exchanged a look with the investigators. He slowly opened the box. Inside were dozens of folders, photographs, financial records, copies of official documents, and a small portable hard drive sealed inside a plastic bag. Ryan's heart raced. One folder immediately caught his attention. Across the front was a handwritten title, Internal Corruption Investigation. He carefully opened it. The first page listed several names. Some belonged to former officers. Others were still working for the department. Ryan's expression became serious. This is what Mason was protecting. One investigator looked shocked. He uncovered corruption. Ryan nodded. And someone wanted these files buried forever. Just then, Rex let out a sharp bark. Everyone turned. The German Shepherd was staring toward the warehouse entrance. Ryan switched off his flashlight. Outside, headlights slowly appeared through the broken windows. A vehicle had stopped near the building. The engine remained running. No one spoke. Ryan quietly drew his service pistol. Police, no answer. The headlights suddenly disappeared. A second later, the vehicle sped away. One investigator hurried outside. By the time he reached the road, the truck was gone. Only fresh tire tracks remained. Ryan lowered his weapon. They've been watching us. He looked down at the evidence box. They know we found something. Back at headquarters, every document was immediately placed into evidence. The portable hard drive was sent to the cybercrime unit. Hours later, the first results arrived. The drive contained encrypted files, hundreds of them. One technician smiled. We're getting in. Ryan folded his arms. How long? A few hours. Ryan stayed at the office all night. Just before sunrise, the technician walked toward him, carrying a printed report. We opened the first folder. Ryan stood immediately. What did you find? The technician handed him a photograph. Ryan looked down. It showed Mason Hale standing beside Rex. Both were smiling. Written across the bottom was a single sentence. Trust the dog if anything happens to me. Ryan remained silent. Then he slowly smiled. Mason had known. Long before he disappeared, he had trusted Rex to protect the truth. And somehow, 8 years later, the old German Shepherd had kept that promise. Ryan looked through the office window. Rex was sleeping peacefully on a blanket beside Ryan's desk. The investigation had finally uncovered the evidence Mason had died trying to protect. But Ryan knew the hardest part was still ahead, because exposing the truth would mean confronting people who had spent years making sure it stayed hidden. By sunrise, the investigation had quietly become one of the biggest cases Ryan had ever handled. The files recovered from Warehouse 17 painted a disturbing picture. For years, Mason Hale had secretly documented evidence of corruption inside the police department. Bribes, evidence tampering, illegal shipments passing through East Harbor without inspection. Several officers had appeared repeatedly throughout the files. Some had already retired. Others were still wearing the badge. Ryan understood why Mason had disappeared. He had come too close to the truth. That afternoon, the cybercrime unit unlocked another encrypted folder. This one contained dozens of emails. Most had been deleted from the department's servers years earlier. One message immediately caught Ryan's attention. It had been sent to Mason only 2 days before he vanished. The subject line read, "Don't trust anyone." Ryan opened it. There was no signature, only one sentence. "Someone inside your own unit is working against you." Ryan slowly leaned back in his chair. Mason hadn't been running from criminals. He had been hiding from someone inside the department. Just then, Captain Harris entered Ryan's office. "You've been here all night." Ryan handed him the recovered files. Captain Harris silently flipped through several pages. His face grew more serious with every document. Finally, he closed the folder. "This investigation stays between us." Ryan nodded. "If the wrong people hear about this, they'll destroy what's left." The captain agreed. "From this moment on, no electronic reports, no department emails, everything stays on paper." Ryan appreciated the caution. Someone had erased Mason's records once before. He wasn't going to give them another chance that evening. Ryan stopped by the shelter to visit Rex. Emily opened the kennel door with a smile. "I think he's been waiting for you." The old German Shepherd walked straight to Ryan. His tail wagged gently, only once. Ryan scratched behind his ears. "We're getting close, partner." Emily noticed the thick stack of folders under Ryan's arm. "Did you find what Mason was hiding?" Ryan hesitated. "I found enough to understand why someone wanted him silenced." Emily looked at Rex. "And he carried that secret all these years." Ryan nodded, without saying a single word. The next morning, Ryan received an anonymous phone call. The voice was calm, distorted. "If you know what's good for you, stop digging." The call ended immediately. No number appeared on the screen. Ryan wasn't surprised. Someone knew he was getting closer, instead of feeling afraid. He became even more determined. Later that day, another surprise arrived. The forensic laboratory completed its examination of Mason's leather glove. A DNA profile had been recovered. It matched blood found years earlier inside Warehouse 17. Officially, that blood sample had been labeled unidentified. Ryan stared at the report. It was Mason's all along. Someone had hidden the result. The investigation was no longer based on suspicion. It was based on evidence. That evening, Captain Harris gathered a small group of investigators he trusted completely. Only 5 people entered the briefing room. Ryan spread the recovered photographs across the table. "This is everything Mason collected." He pointed to the financial records. "The money trail, then to the warehouse photographs, the illegal shipments. Finally, he placed the body camera still image in the center, and this is the last person known to be chasing Mason." Silence filled the room. One detective looked at Ryan. "Can we identify him?" Ryan shook his head. "Not yet, but we will." Captain Harris folded his arms. "From this point forward, no one works alone. If Mason was murdered for this investigation, we're not making the same mistake." Everyone agreed. When the meeting ended, Ryan walked outside. Rex was waiting beside the patrol vehicle. The old German Shepherd climbed into the passenger seat without hesitation. Ryan smiled. "You really don't like being left behind." Rex rested his head against the window for a few quiet moments. Neither of them moved. Ryan looked toward the city skyline. Someone had spent 8 years burying the truth. Now, every missing file, every hidden message, every clue Rex had protected was finally coming together. But Ryan couldn't ignore one unsettling thought. If Mason had uncovered an entire network of corruption, then the person responsible might still be wearing a badge. And that meant the most dangerous part of the investigation had only just begun. The investigation reached a turning point. For the first time in 8 years, Ryan and his team had enough evidence to expose what had happened to Mason Hale. But collecting evidence and proving a crime were two very different things. Captain Harris gathered the task force inside a secure conference room. Only 6 people were allowed inside. Every phone was left outside. Every window was covered. Ryan spread Mason's files across the table. The financial records matched the illegal shipments. The body camera confirms Mason was being chased. And the recovered hard drive proves he was investigating officers inside this department. Silence filled the room. One detective finally asked, "So what's our next move, Ryan?" Looked at everyone. "We stop hiding. We take everything to internal affairs and the district attorney." Captain Harris nodded. "It's time." That afternoon, 3 vehicles quietly left police headquarters. Each carried copies of the recovered evidence. Ryan drove the lead vehicle. Rex rested calmly in the passenger seat. The old German Shepherd seemed unusually relaxed, as if he somehow knew they were finally close to finishing the journey Mason had started years earlier. When they arrived at the district attorney's office, federal investigators were already waiting. Ryan spent nearly 3 hours explaining every discovery: Warehouse 17, the hidden memory card, the encrypted files, the anonymous warning, the body camera footage. When he finished, the lead federal investigator slowly closed the final folder. "You've done remarkable work, Sergeant." Ryan shook his head. "I didn't solve this case alone." He looked toward Rex, who was quietly lying beside the conference room door. "He never stopped leading us." The investigator smiled. "Then he's earned more credit than most officers. Within hours, search warrants were approved. Internal Affairs moved quickly before sunset. Several officers were suspended. Their offices were sealed. Computers and financial records were seized. News of the operation spread across the city. Television stations interrupted their regular programming. Reporters gathered outside police headquarters. No names had been released, but everyone knew something extraordinary was happening. That evening, Ryan stood outside the courthouse watching the news cameras. Emily walked over with Rex. She had brought him from the shelter after hearing what had happened. "I thought he'd want to be here." Ryan smiled. "I think you're right." Rex calmly sat beside him. For a few minutes, the flashing cameras and loud reporters disappeared into the background. Ryan gently held the old leather collar. Mason kept his promise. Emily looked at him. "What do you mean?" He said the truth would survive. "I just didn't realize Rex would be the one protecting it." The next morning, the department held an emergency press conference. Captain Harris stepped onto the podium. Behind him stood representatives from Internal Affairs and the district attorney's office. Ryan remained near the back of the room. He preferred staying out of the spotlight. Captain Harris spoke clearly. 8 years ago, Officer Mason Hale disappeared during an active investigation today. We can officially confirm that new evidence has been recovered. The investigation has been reopened. Gasps spread through the crowd. Dozens of reporters immediately raised their hands. Questions filled the room. Captain Harris answered only one. What led investigators to reopen the case for the first time? Ryan stepped forward. He looked toward the cameras. Then, down at Rex, sitting quietly beside him, Ryan smiled. A loyal partner. Nothing more needed to be said. The room fell silent. Even the reporters understood. Without the old German Shepherd, the truth might have remained buried forever. Later that afternoon, Ryan and Rex returned to the shelter. Emily was waiting at the entrance. She opened the kennel door. Rex looked inside for only a moment, then turned around. He walked back to Ryan. Emily laughed softly. "I don't think he wants that kennel anymore." Ryan knelt beside the old dog. "I don't blame him. After everything they had been through, the shelter no longer felt like Rex's home. For the first time in years, he finally had someone walking beside him again. But although the truth had finally reached the public, Ryan knew one final chapter remained unfinished. The investigation had restored Mason Hale's case. Now, it was time to restore the honor of the man who had sacrificed everything to protect it. The city woke to headlines that no one had expected. Every major news station carried the same story. Missing K9, officer investigation reopened after 8 years. Television screens showed photographs of Mason Hale. Beside him stood a young German Shepherd wearing a police K9 harness, Rex. For the first time in years, people finally learned his name. Outside police headquarters, reporters crowded the front entrance. Questions came from every direction. Who had hidden the evidence? How long had the corruption existed? Would anyone be arrested? Ryan answered only what the investigation allowed. The rest would be handled in court over the next several days. Internal Affairs completed its investigation. The evidence recovered from Warehouse 17 proved overwhelming. Financial records matched illegal payments. Recovered emails confirmed attempts to silence Mason. The body camera footage established that he had been pursued on the night he disappeared. Several former officers were arrested, others resigned before charges could be filed. For the first time in nearly a decade, the truth could no longer be hidden. Late one afternoon, Captain Harris walked into Ryan's office, carrying a sealed envelope. "It's official." Ryan looked up. "What is?" "The review board has reached its decision." Ryan carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a formal statement. "Officer Mason Hale is hereby fully exonerated. His service record is restored with full honors." Ryan smiled quietly. He finally got his name back. Captain Harris nodded. He deserved it years ago. A memorial ceremony was scheduled for the following weekend. Police officers from across the state gathered outside headquarters. Rows of blue uniforms filled the courtyard. A framed portrait of Mason stood beside the stage. Next to it, resting on a velvet cushion, was his old police badge. Ryan arrived with Rex early that morning. The old German Shepherd wore a brand new K9 service collar provided by the department. As they approached the ceremony, conversations slowly faded. Many officers recognized Rex immediately from the news reports. Some quietly saluted, others simply smiled. Captain Harris stepped onto the stage. "Today, we honor an officer who never stopped serving his community. He gave everything to protect the truth. And because of his courage, justice has finally been served." The audience applauded. Ryan was then invited to speak. He stood behind the podium for a moment before beginning. "I never had the privilege of meeting Mason Hale, but over the past few weeks, I've come to know the kind of man he was. A man who refused to betray his badge, a man who believed the truth was worth protecting, no matter the cost." Ryan paused, then looked toward Rex, and he left that responsibility to the partner who never stopped waiting for him. Every eye turned toward the old German Shepherd. Rex remained perfectly still, calm, proud, faithful. Ryan stepped away from the podium. He knelt beside Rex, gently placing one hand on the dog's shoulder. "You brought him home." The ceremony ended with a long standing ovation. Many officers walked over to shake Ryan's hand, but most stopped to pet Rex first. One retired K9 handler smiled through watery eyes. "He's still standing watch." Ryan nodded. He never stopped after the ceremony. Ryan drove to a quiet hillside cemetery. Mason Hale's newly restored memorial overlooked the city. Ryan placed a small bouquet of white flowers beside the headstone. Rex slowly walked forward. He sat quietly in front of the grave. For several long moments, neither of them moved. A gentle breeze carried fallen leaves across the grass. Ryan spoke softly. "I kept my promise, and so did he." Rex lowered his head for a brief moment, then stood again. The sadness that had followed him for years seemed lighter now, not completely gone, but finally understood. As Ryan and Rex walked back toward the truck, his phone vibrated. It was Captain Harris. "The adoption paperwork has been approved." Ryan smiled. He looked down at Rex. "Hear that, partner? I think it's time you came home." Rex looked up at him. His tail wagged slowly, not with excitement, but with quiet certainty. For the first time since losing Mason, he wasn't waiting anymore. He had finally found another partner. 1 month later, spring had arrived. The trees lining the streets of the city were covered in fresh green leaves. For the first time in years, the name Officer Mason Hale was displayed with honor inside police headquarters. His photograph hung beside dozens of other officers who had given everything in the line of duty. No one walked past it without stopping. Some saluted, others simply lowered their heads in respect. Justice had finally found its way home. Across town, Ryan pulled into the parking lot of the Green Valley Animal Rescue Center one last time. Emily was waiting outside with a smile. "I had a feeling today would be the day." Ryan laughed softly. So did I. She opened the office door and carried out a small folder. Inside were the final adoption papers. Ryan signed each page without hesitation. Emily looked toward Rex. I guess this is goodbye. The old German Shepherd walked over to her. She wrapped both arms around his neck. You waited a long time. I'm glad someone finally found you. Rex gently licked her hand. Emily smiled through tears. You deserve this. Ryan clipped a brand new identification tag onto Rex's collar. It read, Rex Carter. Below it, a second line had been engraved. Forever a canine hero. Ryan looked at the old dog. You've earned every word for the first time since arriving at the shelter. Rex walked through the front gate without looking back. He wasn't waiting anymore. He was going home. Ryan's apartment felt different that evening. A large dog bed rested beside the living room window. A blue water bowl sat next to it. Several tennis balls lay scattered across the floor. Rex slowly explored every room. He sniffed the furniture. Walked into the kitchen. Looked out the balcony window. Finally, he settled onto the dog bed with a deep sigh. Ryan smiled. I'll take that as approval. The apartment was no longer silent. It finally felt alive. Over the following weeks, life settled into a new routine. Every morning before work, Ryan and Rex walked through the neighborhood park. Children recognized the famous German Shepherd from the television reports. That's Rex. The police hero parents often stopped to thank Ryan, but Ryan always gave the credit to the dog beside him. He solved the case. I just followed him. Rex accepted every gentle pat with quiet dignity. He never demanded attention. He simply enjoyed being near people again. One sunny afternoon, Ryan received an invitation from the Police K-9 Training Academy. The Academy had created a new award honoring exceptional service by working dogs. They wanted Rex to become the first recipient. The ceremony was small. Current K-9 handlers stood beside their dogs. Retired officers filled the audience. Captain Harris stepped forward holding a polished wooden plaque. This award recognizes extraordinary loyalty, unwavering courage, and a partnership that never ended. He knelt beside Rex, carefully placing the medal around his neck. The audience rose to its feet. The applause seemed endless. Ryan looked down at his partner. You finally got the recognition you deserved. Rex looked back at him. His tail gave a slow, gentle wag. It was enough. After the ceremony, Ryan drove to the quiet hillside where Mason Hale rested. The afternoon sun painted the sky in shades of gold. Ryan placed the new medal beside the memorial for a moment. I thought you'd like to see it first. A warm breeze moved through the trees. Rex sat quietly beside the stone. No commands, no leash pulling, just peaceful silence. Ryan smiled. I think he'd be proud of you. Perhaps. He always had been. As the sun slowly disappeared beyond the hills, Ryan and Rex walked back toward the truck together. The road ahead was unknown. There would be new investigations, new challenges, and new people needing help. But one thing would never change. Neither of them would ever walk alone again. Some heroes wear a badge, others wear a leash. Some solve mysteries with evidence. Others solve them with loyalty that never fades. Rex had lost his first partner, but he had never abandoned the promise they shared because of that promise. An innocent officer's name was restored. Corruption was exposed. Justice was served. And one forgotten police dog finally found the home he had been waiting for. Ryan opened the passenger door. Rex climbed in without being asked. Just as he always had, Ryan started the engine. The truck rolled slowly toward the setting sun. A new journey was waiting. This time, they would face it together.